when police officers denied a black woman the medical treatment she desperately needed. They thought they were just brushing her off. Little did they know, she was a highly skilled doctor with the ability to save lives. Moments later, an emergency forced the officers to rely on the very person they had mistreated, and her actions left them stunned. This isn't just a story of survival. It's a powerful lesson in humility, compassion, and the unexpected ways our actions can come back to us. What happened on that fateful day changed everything for the officers and everyone who witnessed it. Stay tuned to hear how this incredible story unfolded. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more thought-provoking and inspiring stories like this one. It was a quiet evening at the local police station, where officers carried out their routine work. Among them were Officers Ryan and Collins, two seasoned policemen who prided themselves on maintaining control and order. While they were known for their no-nonsense attitude, they also had a reputation for being dismissive and, at times, judgmental toward certain groups of people. To them, the rules were clear. Authority was theirs to wield, and anyone who challenged it was a problem. On this particular night, a black woman named Dr. Maya Carter entered the station. She was in her mid-30s, dressed in simple yet professional attire, and carried herself with quiet confidence. Maya was a doctor at a nearby hospital, known for her calm demeanor and extraordinary ability to handle high-pressure situations. But tonight, she wasn't there as a doctor. She was there, seeking help. Earlier in the evening, Maya had been involved in a minor car accident. While the damage to her vehicle was minimal, she had hit her head during the collision and was experiencing dizziness and nausea, clear signs of a potential concussion. Knowing the importance of prompt medical care, she stopped at the nearest police station to ask for assistance. As she approached the front desk, Officer Ryan barely looked up from his paperwork. "What can we do for you?" he asked, his tone flat and uninterested. Maya explained the situation calmly. "I was in a car accident earlier, and I think I might have a concussion. I feel dizzy, and I'm having trouble focusing. Could you please call for medical assistance?" Officer Ryan exchanged a glance with Collins, who let out a small scoff. "A concussion," Collins said, his tone dripping with skepticism. "You seem fine to me. If it were serious, you wouldn't have been able to walk in here." Maya took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. "I'm a doctor," she said evenly. "I know the symptoms of a concussion, and I need to be checked by a professional." Ryan leaned back in his chair, his expression dismissive. "Look, we've got a lot going on tonight," he said. "If you think it's that bad, you can drive yourself to the hospital. We're not calling an ambulance for something minor." Maya's head throbbed as she listened to their dismissive responses. She could feel her frustration rising, but she knew that arguing wouldn't help. Instead, she tried one last time. "I don't think it's safe for me to drive in my condition," she said. "I'm asking for help." Collins smirked. "If you're not well enough to drive, you probably shouldn't have come here in the first place." The exchange was overheard by a few other officers in the station, some of whom glanced up from their desks but said nothing. The tension in the room was palpable, but no one intervened. Maya stood there for a moment, weighing her options. She could feel the dizziness worsening, but the lack of empathy from the officers left her with no choice but to leave and figure things out on her own. "Thank you for your time," she said curtly before turning to walk out. As Maya reached the door, the air in the station shifted. A loud crash echoed through the building, followed by frantic shouts. Two officers burst into the lobby, one of them clutching his chest and gasping for air. The other yelled, "He's having a heart attack! We need help!" The scene erupted into chaos. Ryan and Collins jumped to their feet, their earlier indifference replaced by panic. None of them noticed Maya turning back, her instincts as a doctor kicking in. Little did they know, the woman they had just dismissed was about to become the key to saving their colleague's life. The police station, which had been calm and quiet, turned into a scene of panic within seconds. Officer Daniels, one of the oldest and most experienced officers, was clutching his chest and gasping for air. His face was pale, his lips were trembling, and beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. Everyone froze as they realized something was terribly wrong. "Help! He's having a heart attack!" One officer yelled, his voice filled with panic. Officer Ryan stood still, shock written all over his face. He grabbed his phone to call for an ambulance, but his hands were shaking so much that he couldn't even dial the number. Collins stood beside him, wide-eyed and unsure of what to do. The confident, dismissive attitudes they had displayed earlier were gone, replaced by pure helplessness. Maya, who had just been walking out the door, heard the commotion and turned back. Her frustration with the officers dissolved in an instant. She might have been mistreated, but she was still a doctor, and someone's life was at stake. Without hesitation, she rushed toward the scene. "Move aside," she said firmly, her voice steady and authoritative. "I'm a doctor. Let me help him." Ryan and Collins stared at her, stunned. "What?" Ryan asked, clearly confused. "You're a doctor?" "Yes," Maya said sharply, already kneeling beside Daniels. "If we wait for an ambulance, he might not make it. Let me do what I can right now." Without waiting for permission, Maya began assessing Daniel's condition. She checked his pulse, which was erratic, and observed his shallow, labored breathing. The signs were unmistakable. It was a heart attack. Maya's tone became urgent. "I need aspirin or anything from your medical kit right now," she demanded. The officers hesitated, unsure of what to do. The same woman they had dismissed just moments ago was now in control of the situation. "Go get it!" another officer shouted, snapping Ryan and Collins out of their daze. Collins rushed to a nearby cabinet and grabbed a first aid kit. He handed it to Maya with shaky hands. She quickly found the aspirin and turned back to Daniels. "Officer Daniels, listen to me," she said gently but firmly. "Chew this aspirin. It'll help thin your blood and make it easier for your heart to work." Daniels nodded weakly, following her instructions. Maya kept talking to him, her calm tone designed to keep him alert. "You're going to be okay," she said. "Just keep breathing and stay with me." The other officers gathered around, watching her work with a mixture of awe and guilt. Ryan stood off to the side, his face pale, as he realized the gravity of what was happening. The same woman he had dismissed as fine enough to drive herself to the hospital was now saving his colleague's life. "Someone get me water and towels," Maya said without looking up. "We need to keep him cool." A younger officer rushed off and returned with the items. Maya used the towels to wipe the sweat from Daniel's forehead and keep him comfortable. Her hands moved quickly but confidently, showing no signs of hesitation despite the high-pressure situation. The tension in the room was thick, but Maya's presence seemed to bring a sense of order. The officers, who moments ago had been frozen in fear, now followed her lead without question. It was clear that she knew exactly what she was doing. Finally, the sound of sirens filled the air as the ambulance arrived. Paramedics rushed into the station, their faces focused and determined. Maya stood up and gave them a quick summary of the situation. "He's experiencing a myocardial infarction," she explained. "I administered aspirin to thin his blood and stabilized him as much as I could. His pulse is weak but steady." The paramedics nodded, clearly impressed by her quick thinking. They placed Daniels on a stretcher and began preparing him for transport. As they wheeled him out, one of the paramedics turned to Maya. "You saved his life," he said simply. Maya nodded, her expression calm but serious. "It's my job." The ambulance doors closed, and the sirens faded into the distance. The officers stood in silence, processing what had just happened. Ryan and Collins in particular looked as though they had been hit by a truck. The weight of their earlier behavior now felt unbearable. Maya turned to face the group, her voice steady but firm. "This is why you should never assume someone's worth based on how they look or where they come from," she said, her gaze sweeping across the room. "Everyone deserves respect. You didn't think I mattered, but tonight I was the one who saved your colleague's life." Her words hung in the air, cutting through the silence like a knife. The officers nodded slowly, their earlier arrogance replaced by a mix of shame and gratitude. Ryan opened his mouth to say something, but quickly closed it again, unable to find the right words. Maya looked directly at Ryan and Collins, her expression unreadable. "You treated me like I didn't matter," she said, her tone even. "But tonight, I treated Officer Daniels like his life was the most important thing in the world. Think about that." With that, Maya turned and walked toward the door. The officers watched her go, their minds racing with guilt and regret. They had dismissed her, ignored her, and refused to help her when she needed them most. And yet, she had stepped in to save one of their own without hesitation. As the door closed behind her, Ryan finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "We owe her everything." Collins nodded, his face pale. "We treated her like she didn't matter, but she's the reason Daniels is still alive." The room fell silent again as the officers reflected on what had happened. They knew they had failed, not just as police officers, but as human beings. And they also knew that they had been given a second chance to do better, thanks to the woman they had underestimated. Maya walked out of the station into the cool night air, her head still throbbing, but her heart steady. She had done what she needed to do, not for recognition or validation, but because it was the right thing to do. As she got into her car and drove away, she hoped the officers would carry the lesson with them and never make the same mistake again. The next morning, Officer Daniels was stable in the hospital, recovering from his heart attack. The doctors commended the quick actions taken at the station, emphasizing that without the aspirin and immediate intervention, the outcome could have been far worse. Word of Maya's heroic efforts had spread among the police officers, leaving many of them in awe and shame. Back at the station, Ryan and Collins sat in the break room, silently reflecting on the events of the previous night. Their usual confidence was gone, replaced by the weight of their regret. They couldn't stop thinking about how they had dismissed Maya when she needed help, only for her to step in and save their colleague's life. "I can't believe we treated her that way," Ryan finally said, breaking the silence. "And then, she saved Daniels. She didn't even hesitate." Collins nodded, rubbing his temples. "We looked at her and saw someone who didn't matter. But she's the reason Daniels is alive right now. We were wrong, Ryan. So wrong." Their conversation was interrupted when another officer entered the room. "She's here," he said, looking nervous. Ryan and Collins exchanged a glance before quickly getting up. They knew exactly who she was. Maya had come back to the station, this time to file a report about the car accident she'd been involved in the night before. She had recovered enough from her symptoms to drive safely, but wanted to ensure the incident was documented properly. When Maya stepped into the station, she was greeted with an awkward silence. Officers who had witnessed the events of the previous night avoided her gaze, while others whispered quietly among themselves. But Maya walked in with the same calm and composed demeanor she had shown during the emergency. Ryan and Collins approached her hesitantly, their usual authoritative posture replaced by nervous humility. "Dr. Carter," Ryan began, his voice unusually soft. "Thank you for coming back. We owe you an apology." Maya raised an eyebrow, her expression neutral. "Do you?" she asked, her tone measured. Collins spoke next, his voice trembling slightly. "We didn't treat you with the respect you deserved last night. We ignored you when you asked for help, and that was wrong. You had every reason to walk away, but instead, you stayed and saved Daniels. We can't thank you enough for what you did." Maya looked at the two officers, her gaze steady. "Do you understand why what you did was so harmful?" she asked. Ryan nodded, swallowing hard. "We made assumptions about you. We thought you didn't matter, that you were just another person coming in with a minor complaint. But we were wrong. You matter, and we should have treated you that way from the start," Collins added. "You showed more grace and professionalism in one night than we've shown in years. You had every right to leave us to figure it out, but you didn't. We don't deserve your forgiveness, but we're asking for it anyway." Maya sighed, crossing her arms as she considered their words. "What you need to understand," she said, "is that this isn't just about me. It's about how you see and treat everyone who walks through that door. If I hadn't been a doctor, if I hadn't been able to help Daniels, would you have even reflected on your actions?" The question hung in the air, heavy with truth. Ryan and Collins looked at each other, both of them struggling to respond. Finally, Ryan said, "You're right. We've been dismissive for far too long, and it's not just you. We've treated others the same way. This has to change." Maya nodded slowly. "It does. People come to you for help because they believe in your role as protectors and responders. If you dismiss them based on assumptions, you're not just failing them, you're failing your duty." Her words struck a chord with every officer in the room. They had grown comfortable in their authority, forgetting the responsibility that came with it. Maya's calm yet firm tone cut through their defenses, forcing them to confront the truth. "I'm glad Daniels is okay," Maya said, her voice softening slightly. "And I hope this experience teaches you something important. You have the power to make a difference in people's lives, but only if you choose to use it wisely." Ryan and Collins nodded, their expressions filled with gratitude and regret. "Thank you," Ryan said, "for everything. We'll do better. We promise." Maya gave them a small nod before heading to the front desk to file her report. As she left the station a short while later, the officers watched her go, silently vowing to change how they approached their roles moving forward. The station remained quieter than usual after Maya left. The officers, especially Ryan and Collins, felt the weight of the previous night's events deeply. The woman they had dismissed so casually had proven to be not only a hero but a better person than they had been. While they had refused her help in her moment of need, she had stepped up without hesitation to save one of their own. Later that day, word about Maya's actions spread beyond the station. Officer Daniels, now recovering in the hospital, made it a point to tell everyone about the doctor who had saved his life. "She didn't have to help me," he told his visiting colleagues, "especially after the way you treated her, but she did anyway. She's the reason I'm still here." Hearing those words hit the officers hard. They knew they had taken their positions for granted, allowing bias and assumptions to cloud their judgment. Now, they realized how damaging those attitudes could be, not just to others, but to their own integrity. A few days later, the police department received an official commendation from the hospital where Maya worked. The letter didn't detail the officer's initial behavior, but highlighted Maya's professionalism and quick actions that had saved Officer Daniels' life. "Her dedication to her duty as a doctor is commendable," the letter read. "Her actions remind us all of the power of compassion and competence, even under difficult circumstances." The department framed the letter and hung it in the station's main hallway. But for Ryan and Collins, it wasn't just a symbol of Maya's heroism. It was a reminder of their failure to live up to the responsibilities of their own roles. One evening, Ryan sat in the station's break room, scrolling through news articles about similar incidents of bias and mistreatment in other police departments. Each story felt like a mirror, reflecting the flaws in his own behavior. He thought back to Maya's words. This isn't just about me. It's about how you see and treat everyone who walks through that door. Those words replayed in his mind, pushing him to think more deeply than he ever had before. Collins walked in and sat across from Ryan, breaking his thoughts. I can't stop thinking about it either, Collins admitted, his tone heavy. We messed up, big time. Ryan nodded. It's not just about that one night, though, he said. We've been like this for years, assuming, dismissing, thinking we know who's worth our time and who isn't. Collins sighed. Yeah, and it almost cost Daniels his life. If she hadn't been there... His voice trailed off, the weight of the thought too heavy to finish. Ryan leaned forward, his elbows on the table. We need to change, not just us, this whole place. If we keep going like this, we're going to keep failing the people who need us most. The next day, Ryan and Collins approached their commanding officer with an idea. They wanted to organize a training session focused on bias awareness and empathy in public service. We need to understand how our assumptions affect the way we treat people, Ryan explained. We can't keep repeating the same mistakes. Their commanding officer, initially skeptical, agreed after hearing about the incident with Maya. You're right, he said. This station has gotten too comfortable. It's time to shake things up. The training session was scheduled for the following week. To the officer's surprise, Maya herself was invited to speak as a guest. When she entered the room, the officers fell silent. Her calm and confident demeanor commanded attention, but there was no trace of bitterness or anger in her expression. Thank you for having me, Maya began. I'm here not to criticize, but to share what I hope will be a valuable perspective. She spoke about the importance of empathy and the power of seeing every individual as worthy of respect. You have an incredible responsibility, she said. When people come to you, they are often at their most vulnerable. How you treat them can make all the difference, not just in their experience, but in how they see the world. Her words resonated deeply with the officers, many of whom were hearing these ideas for the first time. By the end of the session, it was clear that Maya had left a lasting impact on the room. In the weeks following Maya's training session, the police station underwent a transformation. The officers began reflecting on their behavior and how they approached their roles. Ryan and Collins, in particular, took it upon themselves to lead by example, ensuring they treated everyone who walked through the station with dignity and respect. One of the first changes they implemented was an open-door policy. Anyone entering the station would be heard, no matter how minor their concerns seemed. Officers were instructed to listen actively and respond with empathy. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere in the station began to shift. Where there had once been dismissiveness and indifference, there was now understanding and compassion. Ryan and Collins also worked with their commanding officer to introduce regular bias awareness training sessions. The station partnered with local community leaders and professionals, including Maya, to educate the officers on the importance of breaking down stereotypes and treating every individual as an equal. These sessions included role-playing scenarios and discussions about past mistakes, forcing the officers to confront their own prejudices. Maya's presence in these sessions was particularly impactful. Her calm and insightful approach made the officers feel comfortable opening up, even when discussing difficult topics. She often reminded them, change doesn't happen overnight, but every small step matters. What's important is your commitment to doing better every day. Officer Daniels, who had fully recovered from his heart attack, became one of the station's biggest advocates for change. He often spoke about how Maya had saved his life and urged his colleagues to honor her actions by improving how they treated others. She didn't hold a grudge, Daniel said during one session. She just did what needed to be done. That's the kind of integrity we should all strive for. For Maya, the experience became a turning point in her own life as well. While she continued her work as a doctor, she also became an advocate for equity and respect in public services. She spoke at local events, sharing her story and emphasizing the importance of treating everyone with compassion. You never know who someone is or what they're capable of, she often said. But you can always choose to treat them with kindness. Her story gained attention beyond the community. News outlets picked up the tale of the doctor who had saved a police officer's life after being mistreated. Many praised her grace and professionalism, while others saw her actions as a call for systemic change in how institutions interact with the people they serve. Months later, the police station received a visit from Maya. This time, she wasn't there because of an emergency or a training session. She had been invited to an awards ceremony where she would be honored for her actions. The officers, who had once dismissed her, now stood in awe as she entered the room. The commanding officer stepped forward to present her with a plaque that read, "In recognition of exceptional courage and compassion." The room erupted into applause as Maya accepted the award, her face calm, but touched by the gesture. In her acceptance speech, Maya didn't focus on the past, but on the future. "This isn't just about one moment," she said. "It's about the countless moments that follow. It's about how we choose to treat each other every day. Kindness isn't a weakness. It's a strength. And it's something we can all practice, no matter where we are or what we do." Her words were met with another round of applause, but the most meaningful reaction came from Ryan and Collins. They approached her after the ceremony, their expressions filled with gratitude and humility. "Dr. Carter," Ryan began, his voice steady but emotional, "I want to thank you again, not just for saving Daniels, but for teaching us what it means to truly serve others." Collins nodded. "We've learned so much from you, and we'll keep working to be better." Maya smiled warmly. "That's all anyone can ask," she said. "Change takes time, but it starts with moments like these." As the ceremony ended, the officers and community members left feeling inspired. The station had come a long way since that fateful night, and while there was still work to be done, the commitment to improvement was clear. For Maya, the experience reaffirmed her belief in the power of compassion and perseverance. She knew she couldn't change the world overnight, but she also knew that every act of kindness, no matter how small, had the potential to make a difference. The story of Maya and the officers wasn't just about one incident. It was about growth, redemption, and the realization that respect and empathy could transform even the most challenging situations. It became a reminder to everyone who heard it that while mistakes can't be undone, they can lead to meaningful change if met with accountability and a willingness to learn. In the end, the officers at the station didn't just become better at their jobs, they became better people. And for Maya, that was the greatest outcome of all. The story of Dr. Maya Carter and the police officers reminds us of a powerful truth. How we treat others in their moment of need says more about us than it does about them. Maya could have walked away after being dismissed, but instead, she chose to rise above the mistreatment and save a life. Her actions not only saved Officer Daniels but also sparked a transformation within the station and its officers. This isn't just a story about one incident. It's about the potential for growth, the power of compassion, and the importance of accountability. The officers learned the hard way that their biases could blind them to the value of the people they were sworn to serve. But Maya's grace and professionalism gave them a chance to change for the better. What about you? How do you handle situations where you're treated unfairly? Do you believe everyone deserves a second chance to learn and grow? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful and thought-provoking stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with another tale that reminds us all of the strength in kindness and the impact of our actions. Until then, take care, and remember, small acts of compassion can lead to big changes.